went from making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year at 26 years old. And then I completely failed. So I went from the year after that making 200,000 to going to build my own company and making $5,000 in my first year. Epic failure. My grandfather was in the Marine Corps in the United States. And so he had like this 5-star general guy who's there, and I'm 5 years old. And he comes up to me, he says, "Sweetheart, what do you want to be when you grow up?" He said, "First woman president of the United States."
I love it.
As life starts to happen, as it often does to us, and then your hopes, dreams, and wishes start to get diminished based on people and what reality starts to set in, what you can do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, right? But the older I got, I just was scratching my head. I was like, what are these strange creatures called humans? They say they do one thing, and then they do the exact opposite. There should be some sort of book on how to be a human that I clearly did not get. Actually, I had a beautiful breakthrough last year. To tie it back into the inner child work, it's one of my favorite techniques that I work with people on. A business coach came into my life, Julian Adler, who radically changed my life. We had the best year of our life last year. We were negotiating an offer to purchase the company, and the day we got the offer, he died. I want you to look at yourself in the mirror every day and tell yourself, "I love you." And if you haven't done that, that in and of itself will regain you access to the power of your voice, to standing up in the light of who you are as a human.
Welcome back to Beyond the Keynote. Today I'm very excited because I'm speaking to Jennifer Hill. Jennifer is a CEO, co-founder, keynote speaker and executive coach, a very busy woman. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Carmen, for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Now, we are in different parts of the world today. Most people that have been listening and following along will know I'm in Melbourne, Australia. Whereabouts are you?
I'm based in Lisbon, Portugal, when I'm not traveling.
Amazing. And so I think we've got a 7 a.m. here and an 8 p.m. where you are, but isn't it amazing that we still get to talk to each other and do this?
I know, I love it.
Well, I think we've got lots to talk about today and lots to dive into. Before we dive into what you're doing now and all of the speaking, I think it's always fascinating to find out how you got to where you are today. So tell us about you as a little girl, and did you ever imagine that you'd be doing what you are doing today?
I always remember I was 5 years old, and where I had these ambitions, I had no idea. And my grandfather was in the Marine Corps in the United States, and he and my grandmother would throw these fabulous 4th of July parties every 4th of July in the US. And so he had like this 5-star general guy who's there, and I'm 5 years old, and I'm passing out little hors d'oeuvres. And he comes up to me, he says, "Sweetheart, what do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "First woman president of the United States." Now, where
I love it.
up with that at 5 years old. And then my mom tells me later, she's like, "Yeah, honey, you said you wanted to be a jet setter." I'm like, where I even came up with this stuff, I don't even know. So I had very high ambitions from a very, very young age. World domination, one speaking engagement.
Good.
So all kidding aside, after that, as life starts to happen, as it often does to us, and then your hopes, dreams, and wishes start to get diminished based on people and what reality starts to set in, what you can do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, right? And I fell into that trap because as I got older, to me, it wound up being like, you got a book on how to be a human being, and he and she got books on how to be human. But the older I got, I just was scratching my head. I was like, what are these strange creatures called humans? They say they do one thing, and then they do the exact opposite. There should be some sort of book on how to be a human that I clearly did not get. So as I got older, I noticed I started to diminish my light, and I started to go within. And where I started off as this bright, sparkly thing that just wanted to conquer the world, I started to go internally and hide. I found myself by the time I was in my early teens, spending my school lunches tucked away in the library studying books or helping kids with special needs. And so by the time I hit about 15, I started to write a new script, which was be whoever you have to be to belong. And that included finding a new best friend who was everything I wasn't. She was beautiful, magnetic, dangerous, one of the most popular girls in our middle school. And so I became her mini-me, and I just started trying to do all the things she did. And she could sometimes be very unkind to other people. And I was like, oh, this is how you make friends. If you're unkind to people, that's how people love you. So thus began my life and my journey, and what turned into 7 years of drugs and alcohol and a decade of bulimia and leaving high school early at 16 to go straight to college and just never quite getting it right or fitting in until I began my awakening around 15 or so years ago of meditation, studying Kabbalah, and now I have 180 tools I use on how not to be a dick to myself and others.
Wow. Well, I love that. We're going to have to dive into those tools. I mean, that's a huge transition from the shiny 5-year-old that said she was going to be president of the United States, to having to hide away and not shine your light. And it's interesting. My business is called Illuminated Story because we want to illuminate people's messages out to the world, because I find that so many people are brilliant and have incredible messages and stories that they could be sharing, but they just don't have the skill or the confidence, or mainly skill or confidence. Probably confidence first, skill comes second, to do that. So before you were 15 and you felt like you had to act like this best friend that doesn't sound like the best role model, and that you were hiding away, what do you think? What It wasn't like all of a sudden, bang, you went from one to the other. So, what do you think you heard or saw that accumulated and sent you down this path?
I can better understand it now, having 8 years ago been diagnosed as being autistic. At the time, women certainly were not being diagnosed as being on the spectrum. I was always put in, what do they call it? GATE classes, what they called it in the United States, gifted advanced classes. And so I think that for me, when I went to middle school, my parents had an opportunity to put me in a private castle with Rhodes Scholars with the two other smartest kids in the school. And ironically, I love my parents. They were amazing. They did the best they could, right? And my parents were like, that'll be bad for her not to get the socialization experience of middle school and all this, right? And so then they left me in normal middle school instead of going with the two kids who wound up being like valedictorians and MIT and like some of the smartest people in the world, right? I'm like, okay, well, this was clearly the path that was meant for me. But around that time, because I didn't understand socialization, like I'm very, very literal. My husband calls me his literal lady, which is very accurate. And so I couldn't tell when people were bluffing me or when they were being true or authentic or not. So the older I got, you know what it's like with kids in middle school. I will always remember this particular moment. I was in Mrs. Ferguson's English class. I think I was 13 years old. And up till that point, I loved to perform. I loved to sing. I loved to dance. I was even taking theater classes. And then one of the girls in class says to me before we go on our lunch break, oh, sing again. I was singing this Janet Jackson song that was popular at the time called Again. And so I just kind of started singing, and she's like, oh, you're so good. Well, this was like American Idol long before American, was it even American Idol? What's the one where they made fun of people? I don't even watch television, so I don't quite know. But it was like one of those things where I didn't know she was making fun of me. So next thing you know, it's a school lunch. I'm 13 years old. I start singing my heart out, and a crowd of 200 people forms around me. But I didn't know they were all making fun of me. And so that really had me go whoosh and go deeply internal. And then it had me start to come up with strategies to protect myself. It was really fascinating, actually. Last Friday, I was having coffee with a guy here in Lisbon who told me he spent 700 hours studying nonviolent communication. And one of the things he was talking about was needs. Like if we think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and our strategies to get our needs met. And our needs, one of the biggest ones is belonging. If we don't have belonging, food, shelter, then we might come up with strategies to try and manipulate or try to survive whatever it is the need that we think isn't being met. So that was a very big aha moment, not just for me, but seeing other people and going, oh, wow, somebody's not misbehaving. Maybe they just have a need that isn't getting met. And what if we could get to the underlying need? Like he gave a great example at our coffee. He said, if somebody says you're being, what was it? If somebody says you're being selfish, then he might say to them, oh, you're saying that you need more consideration from me. And it's a really interesting pivot. And of course, I didn't have any of those skills, nor did I discover I was autistic till decades later. And now having the having the power of perspective, I can have deep compassion and empathy for the kids who are at the school and for the 13-year-old version of myself and the 15-year-old version of myself and all of it. And I think I was just on a call right before this, helping somebody with this work. When we can learn, Carmen, to love and accept ourselves fully, this is my gift. This is all the work I do in the world with my companies and the speaking I do and everything I do with coaching, consulting, is helping reconnect people to themselves. It's what I call the golden triangle of connection. When you are deeply, intimately connected to yourself and you love, cherish, and accept yourself, that allows for deep intimacy with others, and then that allows for connection to purpose. But most of us spend our whole lives seeking external validation, seeking the likes, seeking the comments, seeking the A's or whatever that might be. And then it all falls down like a house of cards as we get older. We hope that the spouse, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the whomever likes us, that our friends like us, that our bosses like us. But it's all going to fall apart if you don't love yourself first.
So true. Very good, wise words there. And it's just heartbreaking. I have children as well, and it's just heartbreaking when children are mean to each other in so many different ways. There's so many different ways it happens. And as you said, it's normally whatever's happening internally for the person that's being mean that's causing it. But hard when you're on the receiving end at the time, especially when you're young and not experienced and you don't really know how to navigate what's happening to you at the time. Obviously, it's turned you into an incredible woman who is just shining light on so many people around the world. I know you said you've got an enormous group of people, and some of them are in Melbourne. So hello to anyone in Melbourne that might be listening to Jennifer and I speaking right now. Now, one of the things you mentioned is that you did some performing and theatre, and somebody potentially turned that into something you didn't like. I'd be interested to know, because it sounds like you loved it and then that terrible incident happened. So is it something you still enjoy, or was it something that you were able to enjoy post singing in front of 200 people and getting teased?
Yeah, I actually had a beautiful breakthrough last year, to tie it back into the inner child work. It's one of my favorite techniques that I work with people on. And so my inner child, when I started doing work with her, it's a version of yourself at any age that you want to work with if you've never done it before. And you can just meditate and place a hand on your heart. There's many ways to do it. And long story short, about a decade ago, when I started doing that work, it turned out her favorite thing is dancing and ice cream and singing. Like, those are all her favorite things. So for years, I'd really squashed that. That little sparkly girl was just like shy or not speaking out, or I would speak on stages, but I wasn't singing or dancing my heart out. So fast forward last year, a friend of mine, JP Newman, is having this big birthday party in Austin, Texas. And JP's really successful. So he flies in or has like this full live band. Like, I'm talking like guitarist, drummer, etc. And part of his wish, for JP's wish for his own birthday and his wife, was they were going to karaoke and perform. So I had never in my life karaokeed. Since that day with like the 200 people, it was hilarious. I had not sung in public aside from like maybe singing with my husband and dog or whatever, right? Or singing happy birthday to a friend. So here I am. There's like, I don't know, 100 plus people, and everybody else is going, and I signed my name up. Like, I'll sing in the car, Don't Stop Believing by Journey. That's like one of my favorit songs to sing, right? Or a Little Mermaid.
Great song.
That's my jam. Like, you put on Don't Stop Believing by Journey, it's like something overtakes me, and I'm like, I think I'm a rock star. So that's what happened that night, is I had never sung live in my life, and thank God a friend of mine, Ariana Hall, was there. And Ariana was a professional singer, and she is extraordinary. I'd heard her sing before. She opened the night with Whitney Houston, and we're all like, oh my God.
Amazing.
Insane. So I told her how nervous I was, and I hadn't, like, I'm used to speaking on stages. I've spoken in front of 100,000 people, and that doesn't bother me, but singing was something different, right? So Ariana says, Jen, do you want me to be your backup singer? I was like, I love you, girl. Thank you. So they call me up, and next thing you know, here I have like the world's best singer as my backup singer. I have like a full 5-piece band and 100 people. and I rocked my heart out. Now, I was probably horrifically off key. Like, I think I have a video my friend Calla got of it, and it wasn't by any means perfect or in key or noteworthy, but I loved it. I just really owned that same sparkle that that 5-year-old in me had. And it was a huge breakthrough. And I think I even did a post about it on social at the time saying that it was a wonderful thing to come back and realize no matter what pains that we may have perceived that somebody else caused us or that we caused to ourselves or that the world caused us, can we confront those and dance with them literally, metaphorically, and sing our hearts out? So, what's a lot of fun is since that time, my husband and I now sing down the streets. We were in Amsterdam last year, completely sober, and here we are. And our favorite thing now is we pick up a song, like we'll pick the lyrics of say like The Little Mermaid, like look at this stuff, isn't it neat? And we'll pick that, but then we start making up our own lyrics to the song and we will literally sing and dance. And this was happening in Amsterdam last year.
Oh, very
And so
cool.
we're like singing and dancing down the streets of Amsterdam, and this guy starts clapping, and we're like, we're sober, by the way. He's like, even better. And so we were just laughing. I do
So cool. Well, you've mentioned a couple of great songs. I also love that song, Out of the Little Mermaid.
Don't we all?
Being a Yeah, I was going to say, being a theatre girl myself, similar story. When I was young, I was actually very shy, but I loved theatre and performing, and was in theatre for my whole childhood. Went to university and studied it, did a Bachelor of Performing Arts at Monash University in Melbourne. So for me, in terms of the hiding part, it happened when I went into corporate because I didn't feel like it was a real degree. For anyone that's not watching the video, I just did the italics in the air. And I felt like I had to be a proper business person. And ironically, what ended up getting me into senior leadership was my ability to perform and speak in front of others and encourage people and build teams through all of the amazing skills I learnt in my performing arts degree. So it's funny what we think we need to hide sometimes. And I would say with singing, for me, I'm the same. I could speak on any stage, and I obviously sang through musical theatre productions growing up. But at one point, there was another child that basically told me I couldn't sing. And so I carried that and I believed it. And I've actually gone to a singing teacher recently. I shouldn't call her a singing teacher. She's this incredible voice coach that works with a lot of professionals. And she said, Carmen, oh my goodness, like you can sing. What are we doing? Like, you've got so much range. You've got great, you're on key. Let's do this. So that's a bit of fun. That's just a fun project for me on the side. And so maybe I'm doing exactly what you're talking about and tapping into my inner child and just letting her run free at the moment. But I think as well, so the lady you were talking about, Ariane, was that right? The professional singer. Potentially she feels more comfortable singing on stage than speaking. I have a client I'm working with at the moment where crafting her keynote show, and she works, she's a stylist who works in aesthetic intelligence, and she is an ex-professional singer. So she said to me, I want to sing on stage. Like I love singing on stage. I have I don't feel nervous at all about doing that. It's the speaking part that'll be the challenge for me. And I said, well, that's cool. Like I think it's cool that we get to incorporate some singing in your keynote. And I'll obviously help you with the speaking. So isn't it interesting how we're all built differently, and one person can love singing on stage, the other one loves speaking, and you can have the opposite fear about each one. And then, of course, I'm sure there's a lot of you listening who are thinking, I just don't want to be on stage at all. All right, so that's an incredible journey in your childhood, and obviously you've done a lot of reflecting and learning about all of that as an adult. So your parents put you into, we'll call it a standard school, instead of the school where maybe you would have flourished in a different way, but it wasn't your path. So tell us, were you always an entrepreneur, or did you end up moving into a job before running businesses?
It's a funny story. I've only, aside from, of course, the college jobs and high school jobs you have, I was a very shitty employee.
A lot of entrepreneurs
I
are.
I remember one time there was a fabulous Halloween party that I wanted to go to, and I literally just walked out the job. They wouldn't give me the night off. I said, "Fine, I'm going to the party." I
Oh,
just like walked away. I was not the most reliable person between
oh,
the ages of 16 and say 21, give or take, right? And so, long story short, I graduate high school. Well, I leave high school early, go straight to college. So I go to college at 16, and I graduate high school early, or sorry, college early. And as I graduate college early, I get a call, and I was planning to go to law school. So I love logic. In addition to theater and singing and all those things, my brain is also voracious when it comes to reading and logic and puzzles. So I've always loved those my whole life. So I was very excited to go to law school. So I graduate with my class, I walk, I do all the things, throw the cap and gown, blah, blah, blah. And then 3 months later, I'm living with my boyfriend now, an hour and a half up north of where I'd gone to school. And I get a phone call from my university saying, "Oops, you didn't graduate. You're missing a class from high school, US History
oh no.
101." I was like, "Come again?" I walked with the class. I said, "No, we checked your transcripts." And because when I was in high school during that short stint for 2 years, I took all advanced placement classes. So I took AP European history and passed it with flying colors. But I never took US
Mm.
History 101. So they graciously said, "You have two options. Option number one, come back to school for a semester and take the class, pass it. Option number two, take a 2 hour oral exam, pass or fail on a 1,000 page book on US History 101, and we won't tell you what we're going to test you on with the assistant dean of social sciences." So I went for option two. And because of that, I couldn't apply to law school because of the way it worked in the US with rollover applications. So now I had a year, I had practically a year before I could actually enroll in law school. And I was like, what the heck do I do? So back at that time, it was like early 2000s, I applied on, or I put my resume on monster.com. Like that was the thing 20 plus years ago, right? So I put my resume on there and I got three job offers. The first one was to be an enterprise rent-a-car manager trainee. That was very exciting. The second one was to be a lending person. And the third one was to be a recruiter. Now, I had always said if I could get paid to talk, that would be a very good job for me. And it turns out that's what recruiters do. So I get hired by this company and I go to work for them for a couple of months and I'm doing really, really well. But then a better job comes in. We were actually recruiting for sales jobs for other people. And like the dream job comes in. Here I am like 20, 21 years old. And a job comes through that says like, make 50 to 75,000 your first year. My eyes light up. It's like $1 bajillion, right? So I had such balls of steel. I called the guy who was listed on this requisition, the president of this other company, and I said, "Hi, my name is Jennifer Cahill, and you're going to hire me, and I will break every record you've ever had, and I'll be the best thing that ever happened to you." He's like, "I'm sorry, who are you, and how did you get my phone number?" So long story short, they invited me in, and I did go to work for them for 5 years. I broke every record they had, and then I thought I was a hot piece of shit and went off to go build my empire, and I failed miserably. So I went from making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I was making like $250,000 a year at 26 years old. It was insane. And then
Wow.
I
Mm.
completely failed. So I went from the year after that making 200,000 to going to build my own company and making $5,000 in my first year.
Oh no. That
Complete
would have been a big shock to the
epic
system.
failure, like capital F failure, right? And then thank God somebody in the industry begged me to come back into the old industry. At first, I was trying to be like a coach and a speaker and a consultant, and I just didn't know my head from my ass or how to run a business. I had never taken a business class in my life. My best childhood friend gave
Yes.
me a book for like how to build a small business for dummies. So that was my only foray into the business world. And thankfully,
Mm.
one of the old competition of my old business knew of me, and for a whole year they were soliciting me, whining and dining me, trying to get me to come on as a partner with them, which I did for a few months. But it just wasn't aligned. Like I could just tell it wasn't where I wanted to be. But in those few months, I learned everything I needed to know about running a small business in that industry. And my ex-husband at the time we were
Mm.
together, he said, "Jen, you have more clients than you know what to do with at this partnership. Why don't you just go open your own thing?" And then poof, that's how the first company that I wound up selling got born.
Wow, great story, great journey, and I mean, what a huge lesson. I know you called it a fail, but I mean that was a huge lesson because, and I think so many people do it. They think the entrepreneur life looks great. I'm going to go run my own business, and I'm really passionate about this thing, and this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to make money. and I'm really good at it. I'm really good at this thing. And they probably are really good at that thing, but they're not. A lot of people aren't good at business and having to bring in leads, make sales, all of the things that have to happen in conjunction with being really good at that thing. I remember when I left, so I was in corporate for 18 and a half years. I worked my way up the one company and ran national teams, had a big portfolio of brands, all the things. And then I left to start my own business. And I think what saved me was that I was very connected to the sales part of the organization. And so I knew that you had to make sales, like you had to actually get sales to make money. And it wasn't easy still, definitely wasn't easy. But when I look at some others that I know that are brilliant at what they do, they just don't want to do that part. They don't want to do the business side of running a business. So you obviously learned that pretty fast, though. It sounds like within a few months you turned that around and learned how to run a business. And so you're still in recruitment at this point?
No, no.
No.
So I sold that company to a large accounting firm in 2018. Then in late 2019, I was the luckiest entrepreneur in the whole wide world. In late 2019, right before COVID hit, I was able to hand the company over to our team. And it was so funny. You think you're so important, right? I was like, yeah, you guys should give me more money up front because you're going to need, they didn't need me at all. Like I was on a 10-hour a week consulting contract after that for a year. And I could be free for the first time anywhere, I could live anywhere, I could do anything. So luckily, before COVID hit, I had booked a year of travel with my now husband. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go spend a month in Bali, a month in South Africa, a month in France, a month in Italy. And it was all booked and paid for. And then in the middle of all this, I'm in Paris right when COVID hits. And I'm like, shit. And there went those months. So then I wound up moving to, my apartment was packed up, everything. And I was already planning to be gone for a year. So instead, I wound up moving to London for 6 months, then Paris, and then eventually landed in Lisbon.
And stayed in Lisbon,
Travel.
it
I
sounds
travel
like.
an obscene amount. I was on 9 international trips last year, speaking around the world, traveling, and so I love to travel. I spent the whole first month of this year traveling and speaking all around the U.S. So
Incredible. So let's talk about speaking for a moment. Where did speaking come into it? When did you find yourself either being asked to speak or you just decided this might be a really good path? I need to reach out and see if I can get speaking gigs.
I always knew, as much as I failed and hated that whole experience with the singing thing, I always knew I was really good at speaking. Now, what's funny is I was terrible at speaking. Looking back, I thought I was really good at speaking. I was a kid, in speaking class where everybody's like, please don't pick me, don't make me give a class. I'd be like, I'll give 3 presentations. Can I take their extra two? So I was never nervous about being on stage in front of people. And then as I started to build my own company, I think I must have been in my mid 20s, somewhere thereabouts, maybe even early 20s. And I remember that there was a particular conference, it was 300 people, and I thought I was going to be speaking on a panel. And so there's this panel that I show up for at 7:30 a.m. The panel's supposed to be on at 8. I'm talking to the person putting on the conference. I said, oh, no, it's not a panel. You're giving a 20-minute talk. And I
Oh no.
had no talk prepared, and it was one of the greatest lessons I ever learned in speaking. At the time, I was doing a lot of personal development work and ontology and beingness, and I was like, okay, I clearly have nothing prepared. I thought I was going to be interviewed on a panel. If I was being somebody who was playful and fun and engaging, then that's how the talk is going to go. So I have never, to this day, I don't know if I've ever quite let loose as much as I did at that first time, where I was just playing with the audience. I was dancing with all 200 people. They were laughing, they were crying. I had a line of people waiting out the door to meet with me afterwards. And there's something beautiful about that unadulterated play that you get to do, because so often we give keynotes, right? And it's that you're there to give a very specific keynote in a specific way for a particular audience. And I still do it, but the most successful talks I've ever done, I've noticed, are the ones where I do allow the play to be at the forefront. Like one of the keynotes I just gave in Orlando 2 months ago, I just had so much fun with the audience, and the audience loved it. It wasn't a full standing ovation, but almost. And it was just incredible. And people just loved it. And I've been testing material from a new book that I have coming out later this year called The Recovering Asshole. And it's been really fun. It's been really fun.
Love the title.
So it's been fun to see how well the audience is receiving as I'm testing like little tidbits from the chapters and just seeing how they vibe with it. And so a lot of my latest speaking engagements I've been peppering with bits of the book and people love it. So it's been a lot of fun.
So fun. And I love that you're having fun on stage. I think you absolutely should. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the recovering asshole and when will we be able to get our hands on this book?
And so if anybody wants, you can go, this cracks people up, go to antiassholeprayer.com. I literally have a prayer I say every day called the anti-asshole prayer. If you go to that, you can get on the waiting list for the book, and you will also get my anti-asshole prayer as well as my 20 other favorite morning mantras that I use in order to zap the people in your life and draw the right resources in. So that'll be coming out later this year, probably around Christmas. And yeah, it's the story. It's a little bit of the journey I've been sharing today of how when I was a young girl, I just thought that everybody else got a book on how to be a human. And so I made Devil Wears Prada look like a kitten. The parts I left out between when I started building the company and sold it is there was once a time, Carmen, where I literally sent, I wish I was making this up, but I'm not, an all caps email, all in the subject line, that literally said, are you all a bunch of effing morons? Why are you not working harder, faster, smarter? I was a jerk. And it was all mainly to me. This is what I teach everybody I work with, is that
Yeah.
those of us who are jerk outwardly, it's because we're so unkind to ourselves. And then it pours out to the people around us. So long story short, a business coach came into my life, Julian Adler, who radically changed my life. He was the one who first started teaching me a lot of these 180 tools that I now use. Probably at least 50 or 60 of those tools came from Julian in our time together. And he helped me to understand that everybody's not an obstinate asshole. They're actually all just designed differently. And in order to get the most out of people, it's all dependent on you and how you engage. It's kind of like if you took a seed and you planted that seed in soil and you didn't water it, or you watered it too much, you're going to get whatever results you're going to get. And so he was teaching me how to nurture, how to grow people. And he radically transformed my life. In fact, so much so that Julian helped me to sell the first company. And then when I took that year sabbatical and I got invited to start building the current tech company I now run, OptiMatch, App, the person who invited me to start it with her, I said, well, I'll never build another company without Julian. She said, well, can I meet him? And we hop on a call, and she wound up having to step away from the company early on. And Julian stepped up as my co-founder. And unfortunately, we had the best year of our life last year. We were negotiating an offer to purchase the company. And the day we got the offer, he died. So it was heartbreaking. But as one of my mentors said, it's a lesson in resilience. Here I am, and I speak on a lot of shows and stages and different areas. And, I wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for all the incredible tools that Julian taught me and all the tools I use on myself and my clients every day on resilience, because I do exactly what I suggest to everybody else. I have a very rigorous 2-hour practice every day for myself of prayer, meditation, inner child work, breath work, qigong, and that's what allows me to be resilient even when the world comes crashing down.
Wow. Well, I mean, I was about to ask you what are your top 3 tips that you would like to
Of
give the
course, yeah,
audience?
happy to. If you want to go with those, don't worry, I'm good.
You just
I've
threw
actually
a few out then, but maybe let's go a little bit deeper. If you give us your top 3 that can help someone with going internally and therefore becoming more resilient.
absolutely. So, are you ready for my favorite? We'll start with a very, very simple one that I
Yeah.
teach everybody I work with. Are you familiar with HeartMath's work from, they're based in California. Have you heard of them before? Do you know who
No,
Joe Dispenza is?
I don't. Tell
So
us,
Joe,
tell everyone,
so
just in case there's
I'll
lots
give
of people that
context.
also don't know.
So a lot of people might know Joe Dispenza. He's one of the top thought leaders.
Oh, Joe Dispenza. Yes, sorry. I thought you said Jody.
Yeah, yeah, Joe
Yes,
Dispenza.
I do know Joe
So
Dispenza.
Joe, a lot of his work is based on HeartMath's work, and essentially HeartMath has been studying heart-brain coherence for over 40 years, since basically 1990. And I had the privilege and honor of doing a TV show for them about 6 years ago and got introduced to their work, and it was like exploding head emoji. I was like, where has this been all my life? For any of you out there who might be neurospicy and neurodiverse, you'll know that self-regulation is one of the things that stops us, for those of us who might be ADHD, autistic, dyslexic, or even just normal neurotypical humans. If we don't have a way to regulate our nervous system, we spill our emotions all over everybody else. So what I teach people is that, we have these three parts to the brain. We have the amygdala, which is that reptilian lowest part of the brain. And that's the part of the brain that goes fight, freeze, flee, right? That gets activated and triggered every time we feel threatened. And it doesn't understand whether we're being chased by a tiger or somebody just broke up with us or sent us a triggering email. It treats it all the same. Then you have the mammalian part of the brain, which is, are you safe? Can I trust you? Are you like me? And of course, we get to the part that we all know and love, the prefrontal cortex, which is our capacity for love, connection, imagination, creativity. What most people don't know, Carmen, though, is that the higher brain can't function until the lower brain feels safe. So this is why HeartMath, heart-focused breathing, is my go-to technique that I teach every client I work with to start. And then we build on that, because in real time, in fact, speaking of Julian, I'll tell you guys a quick little funny story. So about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, Julian was my business partner, right? And it might have been a year and a half ago. And we were at the time embedding or doing something with AI and possible quantum computing. And I remember clear as day, Carmen, here I was, I'm on a call with Julian, our CEO, David, and our attorney at the time. And something comes up and we're talking about this new stuff we're building out. And Julian mentions on the call that they're building an AI company outside of our company with our developers that has nothing to do with our company. And I was so furious. You could have fried an egg on my head. I was like one of those cartoons with like steam coming out of my ears, like turning bright red. And in the moment, in real time, this is where this technique is so powerful. Can you drop into it when you're about ready to murder yourself or somebody else and go, right? So in real time, when that happened, I went from wanting to burn the company down and destroy the whole thing to going like, okay, I'm just going to do this technique. And I calmed and regulated my nervous system so the amygdala was no longer running the meeting, regained access to my prefrontal cortex, and it obviously got us further enough along to the point where we got an offer for the company. So you ready to learn it?
Well done. Yes, let's do it.
So as I just mentioned, the goal eventually of this is to do it with your eyes open, so that in real time, if you're in an argument with your kids, your colleagues, your spouse, whomever, that you can regulate. When I first start teaching it to people, if those of you are listening right now, you're not driving, you're not on a bike, you're not walking, I invite you to try it with your eyes closed. If you are doing one of the aforementioned things, then feel free to try it while you're walking or driving with your eyes open, but only if you're in a safe space, try it with your eyes closed. Everybody with me? You ready? So
I'm with you. I will do eyes closed. I'm not driving. I'm safe. I'm in a chair.
I'm going to invite those of you who can to gently shut your eyes and begin to focus your attention in the area of your heart or chest. Imagine that your breath is flowing in and out right through the center of your heart or chest. Breathing a little slower and a little deeper than usual. Find an easy rhythm that's comfortable for you. As you continue allowing slow, deep, heart-focused breaths, imagine your heart itself is doing the breathing. Imagine the breath goes in through the center of your heart or chest and out through the center of your heart or chest. And let's play with the rhythm. Let's see if we can breathe in to the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now in the next inhalation, I invite you to breathe in calm. Imagine a time where you felt calm or peaceful. Maybe you were on your favorite vacation or by your favorite beach or in nature, wherever that was. I invite you to breathe in that felt sense of calm right through the center of your heart or chest. And breathe out and radiate that calm to everything and everyone around you. Let's do that 2 more times, allowing another slow, deep, heart-focused breath. Really feeling calm light up every cell of your body. And once more, pulsing and radiating that calm to anybody you're thinking of right now or whoever is near you. And one last time, let's allow one more slow, deep, heart-focused breath in together. Deeply, vividly, viscerally feeling that calm. And one last time, let's radiate that calm to everyone and everything. Whenever you're ready, you can begin to feel your feet upon the floor, wiggle your fingers and toes, feel your back where it's rested, and go ahead and gently open your eyes if they were shut. How was that?
That was amazing. Maybe I'm too calm to continue
You know,
doing the
it's like,
podcast.
this is what I do. I figure, we all have very fast-paced lives. This is the first thing I teach clients when I
Yeah.
work with them on it, and it's a good thing to have. Now, if you're really angry, like I was on that particular day with Jules, then you can also breathe in neutral because sometimes you can't even get to calm. That's why calm is always the first thing I teach people. But you can imagine breathing in
Mm.
neutrality. If you're so outraged by a driver, by something someone did, you feel betrayed, it's very hard to get yourself even to calm. So sometimes you do need to breathe
Mm.
in neutral. But a nice little hack that you can do that I learned from the person who trained me on this at HeartMath is to every time you walk through a doorway, use that as a trigger because the more you can cultivate this, the more resilient you become. And it's like recharging your phone. If we don't charge our phone, it dies by the end of the day. So too is the human body like that. We feel depleted, angry, we feel reactive. And so when we proactively utilize this technique throughout the day, you're more resilient, more capacity for connection, intimacy, collaboration than you might otherwise have.
So true. And I think the more you can be aware and understand where you're at and what's happening, and then, of course, learn the tools that you teach to be able to change that state, the more effective you can be. I know yesterday I was just incredibly tired. I had burnt the candle at both ends for a few days in a row. And I just thought, at one point, I thought, I actually can't think. I'm not getting anything done right now. I was trying to push myself to keep going, keep working. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I just need to stop and I need to go to bed really early and get a good sleep so I can talk to Jennifer in the morning. So I think, yeah, awareness and then tools, and you've got 180 of them, which is incredible to be able to help with whatever is that's going on. So I'm wondering, do you do exercises like this in your keynote talks?
Mhm.
Have you ever done activities?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love
And how do you find that works?
I find people absolutely love it. There's another technique, it's harder to show on camera, but I love doing it in person. I have a sixth sense and a gift, Carmen, where I can actually talk to people at the soul level. It's very complex to try to explain this. There's a technique, one of my
Mm.
other favorite techniques is a Kabbalistic technique called proactive confrontation. I've been studying Kabbalah for about 14 years, and they have a plethora of amazing techniques. And one of the best techniques that I love from them for conflict management is say you're about to go ask your husband or your business partner or your child for something, right?
Yeah.
99% of all conflict could be prevented if we paused before we asked the person and we asked internally from our heart to theirs, is Carmen available to receive what I'm about to say right now? Is my husband, is my child, is my business partner, do they have the bandwidth? And you know how you don't have to be psychic, by the way, to do this. You just have to have common sense and you can literally feel it. Because we know when our spouse or
Yes.
business partner does not have the bandwidth, yet we still like force ourselves on people, right? And so years ago, I was doing this technique about 6 years ago with a gentleman. I was really practicing it actively in my business. And I was actually just teaching a client of mine how to do this with his business partner. And so 6 years ago, I'm doing this. And I'm in a personal development class in New York. And there's a lovely guy there. And we've been talking a little bit. And I'm doing this technique. And I just paused from my heart to his. And I said, hey, are you ready to talk about should we do this advanced class together? Now, no words were spoken. This was all internally. And I'm just kind of doing this pause before I asked him. And the strangest thing happened, Carmen. This guy says, instead of saying yes or no, all of a sudden his soul starts telling me, well, I'm actually doing this because my sister has mental health issues, which is really why I'm here. And I'm like, WTF? Like, what just happened? I never had anything like this happen before. And so then I
Wow.
did the only logical next step, which is I asked the guy out loud, I was like, could you maybe be doing this class because of a family member with mental health issues? And the guy, Carmen, went white as a sheet. And he's like, how do you know that? I'm like, your soul just told me. And so since then, now it's something that I only really do with private clients. But if it is kind of like a fun magic trick I like to do on stage sometimes. I just did this at a keynote I did in San Diego. where I can bring somebody up on stage and I can actually show you in real time what somebody's core limiting beliefs are, and then I can help them rewire it in a matter of minutes. And it's such a fun technique. So it's kind of like a magic trick I get to do on stage sometimes.
Yeah. Wow, that is a magic trick. And do you ever feel so when you're doing this live in the keynote, have you ever felt like there's a block or you're not getting that message from the person or it's just always
It's
flowed?
100% accurate. It's been wild. Like, it's almost
Yeah,
crazy.
wow.
It's like I can just ask somebody, and it's the same way that you would answer out loud. That when it first started happening, I was freaked out by this for years. So it's taken me about 6 years of
Mm.
getting mentored by people and cultivating it as a skill and a gift. And now I love it because I can support clients with it. And it's like so many of us wish that we knew what our core limiting beliefs are. I had somebody I was working with one day who was a very prominent scientist who was having huge heart issues, and it was life and death, and he was about to go in for heart surgery. And I literally tapped into his awareness, and he said I didn't deserve to be born, which is why he was having this heart thing. Now when I hear stuff like this, it just feels so obscure that I don't even want to say it out loud. I'm like, what the hell? Like that guy I was mentioning. So I say it out loud to the scientist guy, and he says, Jen, you're 100% correct. When I was in utero, my mom's body tried to abort me 3 times, and they didn't have enough food to be able to feed me or my mom in utero. And then we worked on it, and he's been alive now for another 3 or 4 years past when this all happened and when he might have died. So I don't know. It's kind of a cool gift.
Yeah. Incredible. Well, let's stay on the speaking for a moment because I'd love to hear if you've got any um, stories that you can remember of a speaking gig that was either incredibly amazing for a certain reason or incredibly terrible for a certain reason because as human beings they tend to be the ones that we remember, the ones at each end of the spectrum. Do you have any stories that you can share with us?
One of my favorites is something I borrowed from a thought leader who I love and adore, Michael Beckwith. I'd heard him use this, and I've heard many speaking coaches will tell you one of the best ways to seed a story is to, or to seed a talk, is to begin with a story and then bracket it so the whole time you keep the audience waiting in anticipation. So I'd heard this beautiful story about Martin Luther King Jr., and the story went something like this. There was once a man who was marching for a cause he believed in. He's walking down the street, the cameras are rolling, and everyone is looking at him like, what will you do? As millions of eyes are on him. A man walked up to him and spit upon him. What would you do? Would you get angry? Would you spit back? Would you punch him? Would you run? Would you cry of shame? What would you do? And in that particular talk, that version, I used to give this one a lot, then I would leave the audience in suspension and we would talk about all the different ways we can react versus respond. And then the final thing of that story is then finally I would bring it back to full circle. I'd say, remember that man that we were talking about at the beginning? That man was Martin Luther King Jr. A man walked up to him during his Million Man March and spit upon him. Would you like to know what Dr. King did? And of course, the audience is like rapid with anticipation. And I said, Dr. King looked down at his lapel, calmly pulled his handkerchief out, wiped the spit off his lapel, carefully folded the handkerchief back up, handed it to the man who spit upon him, and said, I think that this belongs to you, and walked away. And that is, and I always remember getting like roaring applause. People are like, "Ah, it's so good," right? So I've found that stuff like that has been really powerful, and something I've been doing lately that I've gotten a beautiful response to, and this was what got me the standing O at one of my latest talks, is I wrote a children's book last year as I was walking down the streets of Lisbon, and I haven't even published it yet as a children's book. It exists as a short film on my YouTube channel. If you go to Jennifer K. Hill, you can find it. It's called The Palladian Princess, and people love it though, adults. So I've been finishing a lot of my keynotes lately because I talk a lot about empowerment and human connection. And so I tell the story of a radiant little princess who lives in a kingdom of shimmering light high among the stars in a place called the Pleiades. No one needs to speak aloud. They share their thoughts through sparkling waves of love, telepathic messages floating gently from heart to heart. And one day she looks up at her mother and father and says, how can I be a great king or queen like you? How can I bring joy and happiness too? And her parents look into her eyes and they say, my love, one day your time will come. You will journey to a faraway place, to a planet not yet born called Earth. But when you arrive, you will forget who you are. You may feel lonely, different, like you don't belong. But one day, after many sunrises and many moons, you will begin to remember. The princess blinks. Remember what? That you are made of stars, that you are light, and so is everyone and everything. You will teach the children of Earth how to play with space and time and stars and moon and galaxies. You will help them remember the truth, that they are never alone, that they are all sparks of the same bright light, seeking to reunite, to shine together again. And that's how I've been finishing a lot of talks and been getting really positive responses from that.
What an amazing story. So that story is from your children's book.
Yes.
And you don't know when that's coming out. We've got all these books coming out.
It's this year. This is my year of creativity.
Yeah, incredible. Well, the podcast is called Beyond the Keynote, and there's two reasons for that. One is because I just love hearing the stories like yours today, Jennifer, of all the things that have shaped you to become the person who can give these incredible keynotes today. And the other reason is because I like to dream with some of my guests about what could we do in the future. And I think based on everything you've told us, you'll be a good dreamer partner. You've got quite a few topics, I believe, for your keynote speeches. Do you have any that are an absolute favorite for you that we could dream about?
Well, it's funny, when you and I were talking before the show about this, I already had a vision. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
So one of my favorite talks I do is called Cracking the Code of Human Connection. That's one that is very popular. I teach it in businesses, to masterminds, to groups, etc. So here's my dream. I'm affectionately called the fairy godmother of human connection. People call me that because I connect thousands of people around the world. So I have a dream one day of being in a stadium and being brought in, and at the top of the stadium, you'll appreciate this being in theater, I am think like Linda the Good Witch, and I am literally going to come down from the ceiling in a bubble in a full-blown fairy godmother costume with a magic wand and a crown, and I would absolutely incorporate that thing in with soul talking. As I would have people come up on stage, I would connect them to other people in the audience, I would talk about the power of human connection, I would tie in resilience. I would first put them in a coherent state so they would be open to it, then I would rewire all of their brains and connect them with whoever they're meant to meet in the audience. And that would be it.
Oh my goodness. I love the bubble coming down from the audience with Glinda, the good witch in it. Ironically, I just did a talk myself last week in Australia, and I opened with Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz because I was tying back to a story when I was in theatre and I was 8 years old. And I talk about how the theatre director was screaming at me from the other end of the hall to project my lines loud enough. But I start with the lines from The Wizard of Oz where I'm being Dorothy. So we could connect our shows with all of this Wizard of Oz theme that's going on. And I can totally see that. I think that you need to do that one day. And potentially you could do a whole section of your talk without talking.
Yeah, that's very true. People have told me that before. In fact, it was funny. It was my birthday on Sunday, and I love all sorts of tools. And one of my other favorite tools that Julian turned me on to that changed my life is human design. Do you know human design?
I'm not as deeply as you, but I have heard of human design.
If anybody wants to go down a rabbit hole, you can get it. You can go to freehumandesign.com and get your chart, drop it in chat, have all the fun. Do not have chat to your design. It will get it wrong, but go to one of the actual legit sites. But I use this other app called Align. So it was so beautiful on my birthday because the Align app tells you your gifts. And to your point about doing things in silence and not even needing to speak, it literally said, and I'd never read this before, dove in, because I'm so used to doing this for clients, I don't do it for myself. It's like, it's my birthday, I'm going to give myself my own reading, right? So I'm sitting there, and it said one of my gifts is that I amplify other people. It said that pretty much anybody I come in contact with, if they spend enough time with me, they'll become wealthier, more spiritual, more successful, and more connected to themselves and others. So who knows? You put me in a room with 10,000 or 20,000 people, maybe everybody would just magically start hugging. We'd have a K-pop Demon Hunters moment. We all break out into golden and everybody starts doing a dance.
Well, I think there should definitely be dancing in this show for sure. Oh, wow. It's been such an interesting conversation. And I'd love to know if there's anything that you would like to leave our audience with before we wrap up the conversation.
I know we've joked a lot about the whole anti-asshole prayer thing and talked about some of the tools such as HeartMath that I mentioned and inner child work. The most important thing that my vocal coach actually taught me that gave me the confidence to be able to get on stages in front of 10 people or 100,000 people and sing my heart out, share, love, laugh, play, is he said to me when we started working together 14 years ago, he said, Jennifer, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror every day and tell yourself, I love you. And if you haven't done that, that in and of itself will regain you access to the power of your voice, to standing up in the light of who you are as a human. So kudos to my coach, Arthur Samuel Joseph. He changed my life. I highly recommend his book, Vocal Leadership. And just go out there and tell yourself every day, I love you. You might cry, you might laugh, you might be uncomfortable, but telling yourself that will radically transform your life.
What a beautiful way to end the conversation. Thank you so much for being here today, Jennifer. If someone does want to book you for a stage, how would they get in touch?
Beautiful. So people can go to jenniferkhill.com. That's my main speaking website where they can find me. And you can also message me at jennifer@om.app is the company website that I run.
Incredible. Reach out to Jennifer and we will have to stay in touch because I need to see you when you fly in as the good witch in the globe one day. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.
All right, here's where you're standing. You can close this episode, think that was fun, and go back to doing things the way you've always done them. Or you can decide you're done being the speaker, the leader that people politely applaud and immediately forget. If you want to create the kind of moments we talked about today, the theatrical, the unforgettable, the profitable, I've put together something that'll change how you think about the stage forever. It's called Beyond the Keynote, Creating Your Illuminated Story. No fluff, no theory, just methodology I use with elite speakers and leaders who are done playing small. Go to illuminatedstory.com/masterclass. And hey, if this episode hit you somewhere, share it, leave a review. It takes 30 seconds and helps more people discover that great speaking isn't magic. It's a game and you can learn to win it. I'm Carmen Sederino. Don't just speak, illuminate. See you next week.